When my daughter Anna entered middle school, I knew there were going to be some drastic changes. Besides just going into a new facility or learning a locker combination, I expected to start hearing her ask about boys, to be exposed to more foul language, and to want more freedom. She's always been a bit of a rebel, and now with hormones raging, I've seen her transform into a punk goth girl. But what I didn't expect to change was the standard curriculum handed out by her teachers. Maybe that was wishful thinking, but see, I have always enjoyed helping with her homework assignments whenever I could. Although recently my stepson Jeremy also likes to get involved. Since the divorce, I've tried to be equal to both of them, despite their differences. "Why can't it just be us, Dad?" Anna asked, but I reminded her that wouldn't be fair. She claimed she was okay with it as long as we were together. I noticed, though, after the first or second week at school, her assignments weren't what you would call normal. For example, she was doing a history paper on Vlad the Impaler, and the task was to replicate what sort of stake the draconian leader might have used as a weapon in battle. She told me they even insisted that she made a papier-mâché skull to add to the realism of the model. I'm sure you can imagine how strange it was to bundle up together old pieces of newspaper and make them resemble a human head. But I figured that maybe the teacher had a flair for the dramatic and I didn't question it much. Jeremy teased Anna as she did the work, causing her to get frustrated and then remark, "You better be glad I don't use your head, Jer." He shut up after that and just watched in morbid fascination. Meanwhile, I did my best to praise the finished product, but afterward did admit to myself it was rather strange. Fast forward to a few weeks later and she had a biology experiment where she was asked to dissect a dead animal. Again, I assumed this was something similar to what I did as a kid using a frog, so I didn't object. The only thing I found a bit disturbing really was Anna had to capture a living animal first for the assignment. My daughter has never been one to take school lightly though, so she did her due diligence and caught one the next day. I remember trying my best to smile in approval as she cut open the wriggling amphibian and it finally died. Afterward, the rest of the experiment went off without a hitch, and I was actually pretty proud of my daughter for not complaining about such a grisly task. In fact, the only thing she was bothered by was Jeremy following her around like a stray puppy. "Why couldn't you go with your mom?" she asked. I gave her an ugly look and told her not to be so mean. I just wanted to keep the peace. And it wasn't until the third time a peculiar task was given to her that I really began to worry. She told me that the shop teacher was asking the entire class to make life-sized coffins in honor of Halloween and that they had a week to complete it, dig a hole, and then photograph a family member in the coffin in the hole. It didn't seem right, such specific and dark instructions for a group of 13-year-olds. Anna got upset when I questioned it and stormed off to get started herself while I decided to make a phone call to her school. Ordinarily, I don't interfere when it comes to this sort of thing, but the sheer amount of bizarre schoolwork she had been getting was putting me on edge. Something didn't feel right about any of it. "Richmond Academics?" the secretary said once I got a real person on the line. "Yes, this is the father of Anna Sherbert. I was needing to set up a conference with some of her teachers," I told them. The secretary asked if everything was all right, and I did my best to reassure them that it was. Meanwhile, in the backyard, I heard Anna pulling apart wood beams that I had stacked in my old shed, trying to find the right ones for her assignment. After I had set up an appointment for the next day, I went outside and voiced my concerns again. "Dad, you're just being lazy. It's just schoolwork. I don't want to get an F," Anna objected. Jeremy even offered to help her. She gave in with a sigh. I didn't want to seem like I was being some kind of helicopter parent, so I didn't object to them continuing even though it did bother me. On the way to her school the next day, I seriously did consider turning around and forgetting the whole thing, but the fact that my daughter had stayed up almost till 11 at night to finish the model coffin, resulting in her getting sick, made me decide enough was enough. Only two of Anna's teachers were actually able to meet me at the principal's office, her science teacher and the history professor that had first started this whole ordeal. I thanked them for taking a break from their busy schedule to hear my concerns and then put it to them straight. "I just don't understand why it is that you've been having these children participate in such, well, to put it bluntly, dreadful activity," I told them. I remember seeing a bit of confusion dance across their face. "Mr. Sherbert, I appreciate your concerns, But I'm afraid you have us at a disadvantage. Just which assignments are you talking about? The history teacher asked. There's no need to play dumb. I'm talking about the dissection, the makeshift impaler weapon. It's gone to the extreme in terms of bizarre, I said in frustration. The science teacher shook her head and responded, There hasn't been a single experiment like that in my class all year. The history teacher also said the same. I remember leaving the school feeling a tad perplexed. If the teachers didn't assign Anna the homework, then why was she doing it? A few stray things she had said about her stepbrother started to fall into place. Suddenly I was jumping into my car and speeding toward home. I must have called the house line at least 20 times before I got there, but there was no response. I made it inside the kitchen, calling her and Jeremy's name. Then I saw a shadow flicker in the kitchen and Anna standing there just staring at me. Anna, thank God. I was so worried. I paused as I saw dirt on her legs and ankles. Where is Jeremy? She kept staring like she was numb to what had happened. I looked toward the backyard and ran. Fresh dirt was covering up a small hole near to the shed, and a shovel lay alongside it. I grabbed and started to dig, desperate to save my son. After digging down for about 5 feet, I hit the makeshift coffin Anna had made and pried it open. I saw Jeremy laying there, arms crossed over his exposed chest. It was clear from the uneven cuts on his chest that she had also tried to remove his vital organs before shoving him into the hole. And his open, shocked eyes were staring straight at me, telling me she had impaled him before burying him alive. I climbed out and looked at my daughter again, shaking with fear. Anna, why? She gave me the most dead stare in the world. Maybe now you'll have more time for me. I'm a single dad who lives with my 7-year-old daughter I'll call Lana. She's a sucker for anything stuffed. She has a bunch of different stuffed dogs, cats, rabbits, you name it. But her absolute favorite was a fluffy pink teddy bear she got for her 5th birthday. She named him Mr. S. No clue what the S stands for. She carries around Mr. S everywhere she goes. Since the day she turned 5, you cannot catch her without it. Sometimes when my wife and I were together, we would have to sneak it from Lana in her sleep to wash it. She wouldn't break away from this bear, ever. But I started noticing something odd a month ago. My daughter would talk to her teddy bear. Yes, she's a child and children do these kinds of odd things. But she wouldn't talk to Mr. S in the way you would think. She would speak absolute gibberish and praise the bear as if it were God. My family isn't religious, but this was freaking me the fuck out. I didn't know what to think of the situation, but I let it be as she wasn't hurting anyone, including herself. This wasn't Lana's only quirk though. Recently she started collecting dead animals that she found outside. She wouldn't show them to me, instead trot them to her room and slip them to wherever she kept them. I'll find random skulls of animals around the house with an assortment of other bones scattered wherever they could be. I've asked her about it once and she said he likes it when I bring him gifts, with a childlike chuckle. I didn't ask anything else. I passed it off like it was a normal kid thing to say. But as the title says, Mr. S has started to smell awful. I work at a landfill and even I have never smelled anything so awful. I tried sneaking her teddy bear to wash it, but when I go into her room at night, I can't find it. Though somehow she always exits with her teddy bear in her arms. The smell is awful, unbearable, but I can't get rid of it. I've never smelled anything like it. If I had to describe it, it smells like rotten pig flesh, but even that smell isn't as unbelievably awful. I don't want to ask my girl about it because she may take it in a bad way. She's only 7, so why not let her keep some of her imagination? But the thing that freaks me out the most is something I found last night. For background, you'll have to understand the way my daughter's room is set up. Her bed is in a corner and she has a giant rug in the middle of her room. It has sparkles and unicorns on it. Typical 7-year-old shit. Other than that, she has her toys in various parts of her room with a giant pile of her favorite plushies. Well, I was cleaning up around her room the other night, and while I was sweeping, one of the shoes to her doll swept under the rug. I lifted up the rug to grab it and decided to check for other miscellaneous toy bits. When I lift up the rug, I see a giant pentagram written in what looks to be red ink. I take a few steps back and stumble in fear. What the fuck is wrong with my daughter? Why the fuck would she have something like this? I go later that evening to pick up my daughter from my ex-wife's house. I see her perky and cuddling Mr. S in her arms. Her teddy is a bit pinker than last time I saw it, but I say nothing and plop her into my car. As we're backing up, she says, "Daddy, Daddy, I left Chewy inside." Chewy is the name of one of her plushies. Her mom's is standing in the doorway, so I allowed her to hop out of the car and go grab her plushie. I noticed she left Mr. S, so I pick him up to investigate. He was wet, and when I shook it, it made a rattling sound. A bit of what looked to be blood got on my hand as I put him down. My child is 7 years old. Why does one of her plushies have blood on it, and enough for it to be wet? She came back with her plushie and slipped into her booster seat. I wish I could say the rest of the drive was somewhat normal, but she started spewing gibberish at her teddy. I couldn't tell what she was saying, but it was praise. I took her home, plopped her in bed, and kissed her goodnight. A few hours later, when I came back to check on her before I headed to bed, Mr. S was gone. Not a trace in the world. Like he disappeared.